Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we are talking about Final Fantasy XIV in 2020. Today we are taking a look at the Keeper of the Lake. This is a main scenario quest dungeon that you will do near the end of the Realm Reborn story as you progress towards the Heavensward expansion. And it has a lot to do, I think, with Heavensward. We are investigating a dragon, and I definitely feel like dragons are going to be up in that expansion, so I'm pretty excited to get into this. Just before we do, though, hopefully you are having a great weekend. I had a pretty good week. It's been pretty rainy around here, so if you hear little drip drops in the background, that's the rain. It's kind of nice, though. It really, one of my favorite things in the world is to game when it's raining outside. There's something really cozy about it, like just having a nice cup of tea or coffee, the rain in the background, and playing your favorite game. It really doesn't get much better than that, does it? So that's kind of the setting of this video, and because of that, I'm going to try and keep my voice calm and rain-like as well, but we'll see. I don't really know what a rain-like voice is, so let's move on. I am healing again for this dungeon. Thinking back to it, I've really just set aside every other job I had. Like, I don't think I've switched to Bard in forever. Even to Summoner, it's been a long time. I pretty much just stay as a Scholar at this point, which I think the number one reason is because I can just like insta-queue for pretty much any instance, and it's pretty nice. But the other reason is that even questing and stuff, I feel like I kill creatures pretty quick. Specifically now that I've started using some of my AoE skills, a lot of people have been pointing them out in the comments. Thank you very much. It's always really, really shocking, but also very helpful, but also kind of saddening when I hear in the comments, hey, there's this really good skill that you don't have on your bar, and you probably should. And I'm like, huh. So yeah, very nice. You'll also notice that I do have a lot more bar space now. I don't know if this is the first video I've done with all this bar space, but I've been hearing a lot of comments like, hey, you're gonna need some more spaces in the near future here. And it was even at a point where there were certain skills I was leaving off because I didn't want to like go and, take the 5 seconds to put an extra bar on. So there you go. I put 2 extra bars on, so we were good for even longer this way, which is nice. But yeah, so we're moving our way through this interesting dungeon. I really, really like it. I'm a huge fan of the kind of blue glowy crystals that they have in quite a few places in this game. But notably, this dungeon has a lot of them. I believe the premise around this is that we're investigating kind of a crashed airship, as well as kind of a dragon that went down with it, and we're trying to see if he is in fact, I believe it's a guy dragon, still like dead or like unconscious or whatever you want, and if not, it's kind of bad for us and for Ishgard. So we're going to check that out, and we're kind of climbing up his, it's kind of like a tower, but I think it's supposed to be made of the crashed ship, from what I understand. But I could very well be wrong about that. And the fights itself, pretty interesting. I tried to use a lot more of my AoE attack on trash mobs when I could, but some of the bosses definitely posed quite a bit of challenge. This obviously was my first time through, so people were pretty courteous to that. I don't think there was any issues where I felt like I was holding people back, but maybe there are certain fights where I make some pretty blatant mistakes, and we can talk about those in the comments. I always like that. But typically I felt it went pretty well, and I think the tank did a really good job of just kind of taking his time through it. I never felt very rushed, and I try to be a little bit more on top of managing my mana and stuff like that, so things went pretty well. But definitely the boss, like for instance this fight here, like right off the bat, he's doing some pretty good damage. And then I saw this auxiliary tank come down, and I'm like, that doesn't look good. But it looks like the DPS was pushing them to one side of the map. Of course, distancing myself from them, I ended up getting in the flame breath of the dragon, which isn't great. But there's no true winners in life. So just kind of, like whenever I'm doing one of these fights and I haven't done them before, because this is another dungeon that I chose to not look up the fights before going in, I've really kind of enjoyed the chaos of it. I tend to try and stand near one of the DPS when possible. Obviously just standing out any kind of telegraphs that I can, but when it's just during the fight, I'm like, okay, I'll stay near people that look like they know what they're doing. Of course, there you just saw both DPS get blasted by flame. So, you know, that's kind of a win-lose situation. This really caught me off guard because he kind of sucked in all of these tanks. And actually right now, I'm just putting together what happens here is the flame from his breath must cause the tanks to explode once they get that kind of red glowiness. Ah, there you go. So I didn't even notice this during the fight, but that's definitely what's causing them to explode. So the DPS must be pushing them to the side in order to keep them away from the main group. And then there's the one phase, obviously, where he sucks in everything, including the people and the tanks, and lights them on fire. That's a really cool mechanic. And that big one there obviously was one that we couldn't really avoid, I don't think. So you can definitely notice the AoE damage is getting pretty crazy, and I'm having to spam a lot of AoE heals, which is definitely when I start running into MP problems. But luckily enough, our DPS seemed to be good to a point where I didn't have too many issues in the end. But that's a really cool mechanic. I didn't notice that yeah, he sucks them in and then tries to light them on fire and they explode. So I'm a big fan of this fight, and even more so rewatching it. I think there's something very special about going through and rewatching your fights. I mean, obviously not everyone's recording their footage or their gameplay, but if you are a new player and you're like trying to improve, I think like even without a YouTube channel or anything, one of the easiest ways you can improve yourself is just by watching yourself do a fight and sort of just pick up on all the little things you didn't do properly. And you don't have to do it all the time, but if you did it a few times and you just kind of notice, like as a DPS, maybe there's certain like ads you didn't attack right away, or certain like times where you could have been attacking and you weren't. As a healer, maybe there's certain skills you aren't using properly at different times, or obvious telegraphed attacks that you aren't preparing the heal for. And then as a tank, maybe just positioning and stuff like that, there could be things you catch. I think it's a very good way to kind of coach yourself and do better. If you want to get obviously more to it, you can expose your mistakes to the internet and have people in the comments tell you what you did and didn't do wrong. But that's kind of what I've chosen to do. You'll hear some sirens in the background here too. Apparently our rainy day atmosphere is going to get ruined by a couple sirens, but that's okay. We'll keep going and pushing forward. We kind of get into this kind of, I want to say like semi boss / trash packs here, where you have to unlock them, and they're definitely bigger monsters that do some pretty nasty damage, but they die pretty quickly. It's important to stay away from the big slicey axe, because it does some damage if you're not watching. I mean, that's a pretty good life lesson in general. If someone has a big slicey axe and they're swinging it towards you, I'd stay away. I'd stay away for sure, because it does some nasty damage. But yeah, we're just moving our way through this dungeon. It's a pretty long dungeon, actually. I think it comes out to around half an hour, maybe 25 minutes. So you better buckle in to listen to my voice for quite some time. I wanted to discuss, actually, from our last video last weekend, where I did include the in-game volume, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in this one or not. I'm not sure how I ended up recording it, but a lot of you did suggest that you did enjoy listening to the in-game music, and I don't at all blame you, because it is wonderful music in this game. So I'm going to actively look to have more of the in-game volume and game music when I can, and I'm going to try and separate them and make it so I can do some skips and stuff like that. I'm going to play around with that, and I hope to kind of bring that experience into the Heavensward as we continue our playthrough, because I do think it adds a fair bit of quality, and it brings a lot of quality that the game has in it, right? And there's a lot of new players who stumble upon my videos, and I think anything I can do in the video to show how awesome this game is, I definitely should. And the music is definitely one of those things that, hey, this game does great, so we should definitely share it if we can. But yeah, all this to say, I think you guys gave some really great feedback. I always love introducing new ideas to you, because you, first off, are very clear about whether or not you like them, and oftentimes you go and say, yes, I like it, this is how you should do it. And that's when, it's really helpful to me as a content creator that's pretty inexperienced. I mean, I've been on YouTube for a tremendously long amount of time, but I haven't really had much I don't want to say success, but I've definitely had more people watching my videos in the last year than I probably have in the last 6 years before that, which is really crazy to think about. But it's definitely encouraging for sure, and I definitely think a lot of it comes with listening to people in the comments when they have good ideas, taking that and improving the quality of the video in ways that you can. So here we are at the second boss. I don't even know how you would describe this thing. It's a gunship. So it is a robotic thing, and it's just kind of hovering there. But it's definitely got like a bug look to it as well. So like, I'd say you took a gunship and a bug and you put it together and you got it like a beetle. Do you see that with like kind of the wings on the side and like the little pincers in the front? It definitely looks interesting. So yeah, here I'm kind of just waiting for us to start. Our tank was definitely like, was being very good in giving us time. And then so he did a kind of a countdown timer here. And this is where it's like, oh man, is this fight going to be like super crazy? Like you typically don't do a countdown timer unless it's a fight where A, the DPS needs to be ready to go, and B, things are going to get pretty crazy pretty quickly. It looked like there was another fire cone attack. So I was like, okay, well, let's step away. And then I noticed the boss move and target me, and I'm like, that's not good. So yeah, he does charge across towards you and leaves a huge trail of fire, which I happen to have go right through the center of the map. I'm now thinking it probably would have been a better idea for me to move to one of the sides and have it just skirt around the side, but we seem to manage it. But right away you can see that the space that you're playing with here is pretty low. So I actually, watching myself do it again here, I do end up bringing it right through the center again. I don't know if it's a good tactic or not, but it's what I did in the time. I mean, let's just at least appreciate that I didn't get run over or something like that, so that's something. But with the ads, with the flame breath in the front and the flame trail on the ground, there isn't a ton of space to stand. So you got to really be keeping yourself moving, keeping focused on positioning, and I'd say more than anything trying to DPS this boss down as quick as you can, because I assume, and I believe this is correct, we'll see in a few seconds here, that the amount of stuff on the ground increases over the fight. So it's kind of got a soft enrage in that sense that you don't want to be around when there's less room for you to stand. And I might be wrong about that, but we'll see in a second. And you can see that we are doing pretty good damage. I think, obviously I can't take credit for the DPS. They're probably doing most of the damage here, but I'm trying to toss out any kind of damage I can add to it. And I kind of just make sure the tank's topped up, and then I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and toss a couple things of damage out. And then there was another ad that got summoned, and this is where I was like, okay, things are getting crazy. And yeah, here you'll notice that we have flames on the ground, and then another set of flames on the ground, and a big ad, and the boss, and there is not much room to stand. And I was like, okay, once he starts doing his flame breath here, it's going to get really unfortunate really quickly. So I just start topping everyone off as much as I can, and people just had to DPS as best they could. Now, luckily, one of the other flame ground areas disappeared just in time to give us some room, and the boss was pretty low. Like, he's at 4% at this point, so we were able to finish this off. But it's probably really hard to do this fight, I'd guess, as a close-ranged DPS, because there's probably, like, without being able to DPS the boss when he's over the fire, there's probably a few times where you kind of have to just wait. If you're lucky, maybe there's some ads you can take out, but otherwise you're kind of just standing around, which is unfortunate. But yeah, so we move on deeper, or I guess higher, into the crashed ship here. Really cool, just atmosphere, I guess, of the area, because I really enjoy seeing how it looks like you are getting higher and higher. Like, it does feel pretty epic. I'm always a big fan of raids that are like climbing up a tower. Like ICC is a clear win for me in that regards. Just like the fact that you go in the base and you're slowly moving up it, and it gets more epic in a lot of ways. So for a dungeon, this definitely felt like a pretty immense dungeon, and it felt really cool going up and just climbing and climbing and climbing to see if there's someone at the top waiting to kill us. Which, we'll get into that in a second here, but very cool. So you'll see that there's like an airship here that's kind of watching us and striking us from the distance, and it seems like it actually helps us by destroying some of the debris that's blocking us. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship we've got going on right now. But just, you have to keep on your toes, right? Or else you'll get blown up while you're trying to take some of the ads out. Some pretty cool little dragonfly ads here. Just, you know, I really enjoy the creatures that I've seen so far in the game, and I would say that you do see a few creatures coming up now and again, and like there's definitely some that keep coming up, which I think are fun, and then they always add some new ones as well. So there's a good mix of new and reused assets, I'd say. And when they do reuse assets in this game, it makes a lot of sense because it's, you know, like a dragon or something like that with regards to a dragon themed dungeon. Like it's never like, okay, they just got lazy here. It usually makes a lot of sense. But there's some really nice assets. Like I really like the wyvern here. I'm just so excited to do some more dragon stuff, and pretty much everyone in the comments is like, he's gonna love Heavensward. So I'm really excited to get into that. In terms of timelines, there might be another video coming tomorrow, which would be the Sunday, but I do not 100% promise it. We're getting very close to the end of the Realm Reborn story and into the Heavensward expansion. And a lot of people have kind of shared their thoughts on what they want me to do and what they don't want me to do. The only thing that I for sure, or at least I'm pretty sure about, is that I want to do a reaction video for the Heavensward trailer. I haven't watched it, and I'm kind of saving that to do. It won't be like a live video, but it'll be like a live reaction with me recording it. So I think that'll be a pretty good video that I would expect in the next 2 weeks for sure. I'm just not exactly sure when it's going to drop. It obviously depends on how many more instances there are between now and the end of the Realm Reborn as well. But the story is definitely heating up, so I'm pretty interested to see. And as you can see, speaking of story heating up, we see that the dragon is in fact, I don't know if you say this is alive, but he's definitely awake and ready to mingle. And I'm trying to think of the name. I'm really, really sorry, because this is probably a very important dragon character. I think it's like midgardsormr, something like that. Oh, there we go. We clicked on it. Midgardsormr. Midgardsormr. I'm so sorry. But in my defense, like, Final Fantasy does so much right. But one of the issues I'd say as a new player is that the names are crazy in this game. Like, some of the names are just out there, and like, it's cool, it really is, but from a pure just trying to attract new players into your game perspective, it sometimes is intimidating and can get confusing when people have similar names but are different people. So it's a little tricky, but I think we managed it here to I hope I said this right. It's what I'm trying to get to. But we are going to go into combat soon. The tank did a really, like, he just kind of waited in front of each dungeon for a bit, each boss for a bit. I don't know, just to, I don't know. He says someone said 1 sec here, so I guess we're just kind of waiting for it. I'll skip ahead to when we start. All right, here we are back in the action, counting down to start this fight. Super big fan of this fight. There's a huge dragon, like god, I would almost say, that's staring at us. And then, you know, some dead dragons on the ground here, and I'm like, okay, these guys are going to come into play at some point. But we start by doing some damage, and the first thing I notice is that this is going to be one of those fights where you need to keep walking, because there are telegraphs everywhere, different types of telegraphs, and some pretty mean ones. But right away we see that one of the dragons does get resurrected, and we start focusing on that dragon while the telegraphs come in. So things are getting pretty crazy. I really like the idea of the boss kind of just giving like life force to these dragons and having them do his bidding, which is pretty cool. Obviously he's kind of like, and I don't know really his position, but he's definitely got control over dragons, which is pretty cool. And we have some other ads coming in as well. I don't even know what you describe this one as. It's got some really cool horns going on, but it's maybe more of a bird than a dragon. It looks pretty scary, and obviously we shifted our focus to it right away because it had a much smaller health pool and died pretty quickly, and I'd assume because of that it was pretty deadly. So we see here that there was a huge attack. One of our people did die, but I am able to get the revive on them right away. And it's at this point that I noticed that this fight is pretty crazy. Like, there's no downtime, and we almost have the one dragon down, and I'm like, okay, the other one's going to come up at some point here. So I try and get this guy topped up because our best defense is a good offense. I think that applies to a lot of MMOs. If you're able to burn through the fight quicker than it kills you, that's usually the best way to handle things. I wasn't sure if it's a time-based way that these dragons were summoned or if it was based on health. Looking at it now, I'm thinking it might be a health-related thing, just because this one kind of comes out around 50%, but maybe it is time and we just got lucky. So this one has a fairly similar, like, pretty much as long as you're staying out of telegraphs. This telegraph's new, this big fire one, that like took up like half the play space, and then another one that took up half the play space. So it's really just a back and forward kind of walking around, and yeah. The bottom line here is don't stop moving, which is hard when there's a lot of skills that you have to stop moving to cast. So as a healer, I think that's kind of your biggest challenge, is trying to position yourself in a way that you can cast certain abilities without getting blown up. I think that's pretty much the biggest part of gameplay for healers at this point. The other thing that would be more masterful is probably knowing when big damage attacks are going to come out, and knowing when you can pop down like a barrier to absorb some of the damage, right? When you're more able to predict things. As the first time run through here, I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, and I was like, okay, what's gonna happen? But I was prepared for this right here, which was another one of those big area of effect attacks. So I tried to put down my shield. Unfortunately, another attack landed on us right after, but I think the shield worked well for both of those, and we kind of just stood in it. And it looks like I was able to save. Like, whereas last time one of our DPS did end up dying, this time they didn't. So I think it was successful, but maybe I'm reading into that as more of a success than it was. But yeah, so we do end up killing the next dragon off here. Without any more dead dragons on the ground, I was like, okay, this is probably just burning the boss, which we go and get started on. He's already pretty low, so I think he kind of shares a health pool with the dragons, unless we were attacking both of them, but that wasn't the case, I don't think. But yeah, so he is pretty upset about us killing him, which is good. But there is a little bit of story stuff that happens here that I do want to keep in the video because it's pretty interesting. So we will just kind of keep it going for a second and get into the cutscene. Alright, so I was wise enough to keep recording as I exited the dungeon. There's been enough cutscenes after dungeons that I'm like, okay, something's going to happen here, and I was right. So we go and have a conversation with Mr. midgardsormr, which is this crazy dragon boss that we, I guess, defeated like his minions. Like, he obviously isn't dead himself, and is awake, which is kind of what we were concerned about. And he's talking about us, and he obviously is against Ishgard, which I hope I'm saying that right too. And he says that they should burn. So he is definitely our enemy in that regards, because we are trying to build an alliance with the Ishgard. And he is kind of like, he's definitely threatening us, and he is contemplating possibly killing us, because he definitely, like, he knows that we are protected, right? And so he does do he strikes us here and sees that we are protected. So he knows that we have protection from Hydaelyn, and this is where he starts to speak to it. So he's obviously connected to a deeper story here, and we kind of got hints about Hydaelyn from Iceheart as well. So some of the very first story that we're introduced is getting mixed in with the dragons here, and I definitely like how they're tying this all together. What happens here, though, is we do end up getting attacked by him, and what happens is, from what I understand, he strips us of the protection of Hydaelyn. So we'll see here we get brought to our kind of crystal collection circle, for lack of a much better word that I'm sure there is. But we see all the fancy crystals that we collected earlier in the game, and they are one by one gonna go dim. So he is in some regards here, destroying a lot of the effort that we put into earlier in the game and taking away the protection, that Hydaelyn has been putting on us. Now, I'm not sure if this took up a lot of his energy or why he can't just like now kill us now that he's removed the protection. But what it seems like is he binds himself to us in some way and is now watching things through us. Or rather, he gives us a companion or a minion or whatever that's a cute little dragon that he is able to communicate with us and sort of see what's going on. As a player, I feel like you could just not summon the minion, and that would resolve a lot of our issues. But I get it. It's a cute minion. It's hard not to summon it, so you may as well give midgardsormr some view into what's happening. But yeah, so very cool stuff. I'm really excited to see what part he plays moving forward in the story. And I definitely feel like a lot of progress we made earlier in the story has been stripped away. So I do feel weaker as a player, which is interesting as well. But yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun with this dungeon. I think it's one of my favorites. I say that all the time. But in terms of story, this is definitely one of my favorite dungeons as well. But let's wrap this video up for now. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.